So he knows he has no control over the president. So if you compare with Uganda, what I can say that in Uganda, we were betrayed long time ago in 1995 by the makers of our constitution. You will find that if it's the security, the constitution will tell you that the commander-in-chief is the president. That means he has control over the army, he has control over the police, he has control over everyone, all the armed forces. So there is even no a single day where the army commander, the IGP, or the commissioner of prisons can take an independent decision not to send the army to the streets. Now, when you come to Uganda, what is that common cause that we are looking at? The Kenyans had a law that was affecting all of them, and they decided to come together. But in Uganda, as people are saying on 23rd, we are all coming to go to parliament. Do you know that there are some people who have benefited as a result of that corruption, and they will not even get bothered to go to parliament because to them they have benefited from that corruption. Now, when you look at our own Uganda UCC here, do you think the MD of UCC will even take a minute not to switch on that internet? Because his allegiance is where? His allegiance is to the executive. So whereas we must learn from the Kenyan protests, we must appreciate which landscape or which country are we in. I appreciate my brother Nicholas Opio, what he said at the start, that when you're under the rule of military man, the military man will not hesitate to shoot to kill in a minute. So we must also understand that when Ruto came in as the president of Kenya, Ruto came in with this new constitution of Kenya, and Ruto is a civilian. So you cannot look at a civilian president the same way you look at a military president. So as Ugandans prepare for 23rd to go to parliament, we must understand that we are dealing with a government that is military. We are dealing with a government that will not hesitate to shoot and kill you. We are dealing with police that is itself disgruntled. They will get their anger and put it on the citizens. So before we make any attempts to march to parliament, we must appreciate the Ugandan that we are in, because we were betrayed by our people in 1995 who decided to get all the powers under the constitution and give it to the president. The Chief Justice cannot even stand and make a decision on his own. The president is now acting as a state of execution. There will be a court order. The president will call the Chief Justice and tell him, please overturn this decision. So before you decide to march to parliament, and before you go for this protest, know the landscape that we are playing on and try to understand the scenario we're in here in Uganda, well knowing that we are playing with a military man. I saw a tweet from... All right. Thank you so much. As you conclude. Yes, as I conclude, I saw a tweet from the Speaker of Parliament saying that she has always been a person who listens and wants to engage with people. If she really means what she says, let her go on Twitter and say that on 23rd, she's willing to meet the protesters and listen to them and talk about this corruption. Let's not have this. Solomon, my conclusion is, before as Ugandan, as the youth, as before we protest to parliament, let us understand that our landscape in Uganda is totally different from the Kenyan landscape, and our institutions are not independent as Kenyan institutions. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks a lot for that. Interesting. Your views, your comments, your contributions are appreciated. We have Thamsanga. You're very welcome, Thamsanga.
Thank you so much, my brother. I don't usually speak on these forums, but I just thought that it is important to provide some balance. Probably what I would call a voice of caution. And I will give you a few examples. Number one, I would like to believe, as I understand, that what you call a success in the protest in Kenya over the finance bill was because President Ruto, my understanding is, he conceded and backed down because he wanted to save lives, having learned lessons from 2007, 2008. And at that time, as you would appreciate, he was dragged to The Hague together with former President Uhuru. Those that are in Kenya would want to be reminded of the events of 2007 and 2008. So my understanding is that the president conceded because he did not want the situation to deteriorate until things were out of control and lives were being lost. So, but if I give you an example of the United Kingdom, France, and the United States, three countries where demonstrations and protests are held, and the constitutions of these countries are what most of African countries are modeled on when we speak about the right to protest. So you'd realize that in the United Kingdom, millions of people demonstrated against the war in Iraq, but none of them dared to cross the line into the House of Parliament or to Buckingham Palace. Why? Because there are consequences to crossing that line. It's okay if you exercise your right to protest, but there are limits to the right to protest. If you remember, in America, people were marching and protesting over George Floyd and other things. That was fine as long as they were not crossing the line. January the 6th, during the Trump protest, the minute some people crossed that line and stormed the Capitol Hill, the army in America was brought in. Lives were lost. And the same thing happens in France. France, they demonstrate and they protest almost every weekend. They go to designated areas. They don't disturb business. They do it at specific times. They do it within what is allowed by law to make sure that they don't disrupt the lives of others that don't want to be part of those protests. None of those in France would demonstrate thousands and hundreds of thousands almost every week or weekend, should I say, dare to go to the Élysée or cross into Parliament. Why? Because the minute you do that, even in France, there are serious consequences when the army is brought in. So I think we need to be very cautious and say the right to protest is within the constitutions of all the African countries. But the minute you cross the line, the minute you try to overthrow a government, there might actually be consequences. And those consequences will be the same whether you're in Kenya, you're in Uganda, you are in America, you are in France, you are in the UK, or any other country that you might think about in the world. So I just thought that let me come in and sound a caution and say, do in Kenya what you do in America. Do in Uganda what you do in the UK. The UK, you would not demonstrate and be allowed to storm Buckingham Palace. Anyone who knows and understands countries and the security of the nations will tell you that that's something that can't be done. So I urge our brothers to be responsible, those that have influence, those that are organizing whatever protests. If you're organizing those protests, don't put other people's children at risk and within your rights, knowing the limits, but know that trying to overthrow a government will come with consequences. And we don't want those consequences to include loss of life. Thank you.